On tonight's edition of The Best Times, you'll meet a man of many roles, Reverend John Kilzer. We'll explore the hobby of genealogy and show you ways to discover your family tree. And we'll examine some of the most common disorders that keep you from getting a good night's sleep. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. The old joke says there are only two things inevitable in life: death and taxes. I think you could add change to that list because change is inevitable in our lives. You're about to meet a man who's gone through more than his share of changes in his life. At one time or another, John Kilzer has been a talented college basketball player, a professor of English literature, a rock star with a top 10 hit, a recovering alcoholic, and an ordained minister. I'd like you to meet Reverend John Kilzer. If you were watching MTV in the late 80s, you probably saw John Kilzer rocking out with his top 10 hit, Red Blue Jeans. Nearly 30 years later, John is still singing, but at a slightly different venue. It's a Friday night in the sanctuary of St. John's United Methodist Church. Reverend John Kilzer is using music to reach a congregation filled with recovering alcoholics and drug addicts, the homeless and the curious. This service is called The Way, and it is the creation of a man who's played many roles in his life. I must say, you've lived 4 or 5 lives, haven't you?
I have. I have indeed. And 3 of them I remember. But you know, it's funny how there's a Portuguese proverb that says, God writes straight with crooked lines. And that holds true, I think, with my life.
Was there a point where you thought, okay, I'm going to be an athlete, that's going to be my career, or I'm going to be a distinguished English professor, that's going to be my career, or I'm going to be a rock star, that's my... Did you think that at different points?
The first one, the athlete, I knew that the only way I was going to be able with my I knew the only way I was going to be able to go and get a college education was if I got a scholarship. So when I was 14, I made a real, it still amazes me that I did this. I played all sports and I was pretty good at all of them. And I remember sitting down and going, now, if I'm going to really be good at this, I'm going to have to do one of them. And it was basketball. And I was dedicated to the point to where, strangely enough, when I signed and came to Memphis, I was burnt out. But that was one that I said, this is what I'm going to do. The teaching English was just because I loved that stuff. That was not planned at all. Music was the least planned of it.
Really?
You know? Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't start playing music till after I was in Memphis.
It's such a part of your life, though.
Oh, it's
I'm surprised.
Yeah,
I'm surprised.
I never sang in the shower growing up or anything, you know. And so it's my sanctuary now. I mean, if I didn't have music, I could not do this other stuff that I'm doing.
Now you had a big hit. Red Blue Jeans was top 10 hit, wasn't it?
It was.
And how many times did I see the video on MTV? My goodness, it was a regular rotation.
Why can't they take that thing off YouTube?
Do you think that I'm going to be a rock star? That's what I'm going to be.
No, that was, you know, honestly, that was really bizarre because I was just really kind of playing gigs in town and paying, you know, paying the dues sort of thing. And then I had a bidding, the next thing I know, there's a bidding war with Warner Brothers and A&M and Geffen and all these, it went like that. And having to get attorneys and all of a sudden having my own tour bus and MTV videos and going and all touring with Moody Blues, Little Feat. You know, I could easily sit here and say that that's why I escalated into my addiction, but that would be not taking ownership.
Well, you were already.
I was already there.
by
Yeah,
that
I was wired for it.
Yeah.
I was wired for
But
it. But let me tell you,
probably
I had
made it worse,
fun.
though, didn't
I had fun. I had fun for a while, and then it just caught up with me.
And didn't it really ruin your career?
Yeah,
With Geffen, right?
Yeah, they finally, they ended up kind of realizing that this guy's just, he's helpless. He's helpless, and they sent me to Europe.
And so you come back and decide to go to divinity school.
Well, the reason I went to Memphis Theological Seminary is because when I was in jail that time that I had a conversion experience, there was a beautiful African-American brother there that started speaking prophetically to me, saying, "You're going to go in the ministry." And I'm like going, if I wasn't in jail, I'd cut your tires for saying that. But he was speaking prophetically to me, and we started having these Bible studies. And so I called my wife, and she, it's one of those, you might know you have a drinking problem if you have a certain place that your wife picked you up from jail, which was the Kentucky Fried Chicken for me on Poplar. And there was the typical routine of where we'd have to go find my car and find my keys. It was always an ugly thing coming out. And so she picked me up at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I said, "Stace, you're not going to believe what happened. I found Christ." And she goes, "You can't find your keys, you can't find your car, and you found Christ." And so what I literally did is I went home, and the gentleman that said I was going into the ministry, everyone used code names because I was in pod 5, and his code name was 7. And so I went home and I said, "Well, 7 says I'm going to go in the ministry, so what does that mean?" So I said, "I guess I got to go to seminary school." So I looked in phone book, and the closest one was Memphis Theological Seminary, and I remember going there to see Dr. Barry Anderson, and he's saying, "Well, what denomination?" I said, "Well, I grew up in the Methodist, I guess Methodist." And then I remember asking him, I distinctly remember asking him, as here we are sitting in the church, I remember going, I said, "Now I'm going to the ministry. Does that mean I'm going to have to go to church on Sundays?" I'm like going, is there any any sort of clause, anything? As I think back on it, it's a little bit, it's a little bit atypical, but here I am.
Let's talk a little bit about the addiction, because when you look at the different lives that you've had, the subplot throughout most of it has been your addiction, correct?
I've learned a little bit about and talking and dealing and working and rolling my sleeves up with folks in addictions that everybody has a little bit of something that they're in recovery from. And mine was just, like a fire hose though. And so the thing that happens when by the grace of God, everything I say, I should prelude it with that. But the thing that happens is that you realize when you kind of are able to quit the drinking or the drugging or whatever it is, you realize that not necessarily that you have a drinking or a drugging problem, but what you have is a living problem.
At what point did you realize this problem is so serious, I've got to address it? What was I've always heard that every person with an addiction has a low point. They hit the bottom.
A bottom.
What was yours?
Well, I hit the bottom and slid sideways for a while. But mine was when I was in jail 9 times, alcohol related. Then by the grace of God, I didn't kill anybody. It was vehicular stuff. But towards the end, I had 3 consecutive times to where I ended up in 201 Poplar. The last time, I was in 201 for about 4 days during the time which I had a conversion experience there in the jail, and it was as real and as mysterious as the ones that you hear about. But that was the thing about bottoms. They're also when you hit these things that are called a bottom is just when what occurs is you do that first step in AA is you admit you're powerless and that your life has become unmanageable. some of us need a little bit, you know, I'm just a knucklehead. I needed to kind of just get more bumps in my head, I guess, you know.
Let's talk about The Way, because that's the service that you hold. Tell me about it.
What we do is on Friday nights at 6 o'clock, which is the most difficult time you would think to have a service, but it's also the time that people that are dealing with addictions and alcoholism, or that's like what they say, the eagle flies on Friday, you know. And then I can remember thinking that's the time when I was trying to get my blend right, you know. So we want to have a sanctuary, a place where people can come. Everyone, people in addiction, people that are wherever you are, and that's again where I use the language, we've all got a God-sized hole in our heart. I knew that if the vision that if it was going to work from when I started out, that it was going to be music driven. And here in Memphis, we're the best musicians in the world. I suspected that if the musicians got their hands on the rope, that it had a good chance. If that didn't work, it was not going to work. And the musicians that have come in and have embraced the ministry, in a large way, I think that's why it's really working.
Do you feel like you're making a difference?
I'm the one that's being changed by, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, there's an extraordinary thing that happens when you just kind of say yes to God, and that allows you a freedom that I never experienced. I mean, I've taken so much LSD. I thought I'm the freest man in the world. You know, I was like, look, I can see the moons of Pluto. And the guy goes, no, that's moths around a streetlight, dude. So I mean, I thought I was free on all this other stuff, but the real freedom that I've experienced is the freedom that comes through the, you know, as it says in Galatians, for freedom Christ has set you free. It's a different kind of freedom. It's a freedom with responsibility, you know. It's a freedom with both hands, you know.
What does your future look like? You've gone through all of these roles. Are there other roles out there for you?
You know, I don't think so. I think that the music component is what kind of drives me. If I didn't have the sanctuary of the music, I'd crumble in 2 days. But if I just had the music like I've had before and didn't have this anchor of faith, then I would, you know, I'd be like a kite with no tail. So you got to have tail on your kite, you know.
This show, of course, is all about the aging process. I'm interested to know what words of wisdom you have from your life and at your age.
Do not go gently in that good night, you know.
Spoken like an English lit
Well,
major.
you know, or through the green fuse drives the flower. It's you know, the older I get, the more I'm just really mystified by life's intricacies and delicacies. It's a natural process. You know, it's full of cliches, but this you kind of move from the love of wisdom to the wisdom of love, I think, and you kind of you're taking that really, even though it's just from here to here. This is a very, very long journey from your head to your heart, and you experience a sort of cardianosis, I think, the older that you get, and you're not thinking so much, and you're actually you're thinking with your heart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
I don't drink because I want to. I just drink for the pain, and it keeps me warm at night while I'm sleeping in the rain.
All of us at one time or another have asked the question, who am I? The answer is, you are the sum of all the generations that came before you. Tracing the branches of your family tree has become a popular hobby. In fact, a USA Today poll ranked genealogy as the second most popular hobby, right behind gardening. It's become a multi-billion-dollar industry with websites and TV shows. Maybe it's time you should become a DNA detective and discover your family tree. If you want to start looking for your long-lost relatives, the place to begin is the Regional History and Genealogy Center in Germantown, home to the Tennessee Genealogical Society. This is where the roots of your past can be found.
But that's also part of the lure of doing genealogy, is to be able to go to a library and find things you haven't been able to find, or go to a courthouse and, wow, I finally came across that land record from 1790 that I'd been looking for 15 years. So
P.Z. Horton has been a history buff since he was a child, and the natural curiosity about his family tree has led him back in time to the 17th century. He's traced a total of 16 generations of Hortons. That's about 7,700 people. It's a hobby that has fascinated him for over 20 years.
I think that part of it is an identity, that each of us, feel part of a community or a family, but we feel a stronger tie to our ancestors. And where did we really come from, and what were they like? How did I get to be the way that I am?
PZ says the best way to begin your genealogy journey is by filling out a family unit chart.
And on the family sheet, you put down the parents and the children, and you put down all the information you know about that family. Start with what you know, your own family, and then go to your grandparents and do the same thing, and then go to your great-grandparents. And as you keep building this information, you're going to find little pieces of information. Well, I don't know where grandmother Mary was born. I know that she was born in the early 1900s, but I don't know where. Great. That's now a piece of information you can now figure out I need to go find.
The most helpful tool in your search will be a computer connected to the internet.
Nowadays with computers, it's greatly expanded genealogy, and allows people like here at the library to come and not only go through the books that we have and the different manuscripts, but allows them to get on the computer and have access to data that normally they would have had to drive to St. Louis or Washington, D.C., or wherever they are. There's a lot of courthouse records, there's a lot of records from hospitals, there's all the military records. I mean, you go on and on, so there's just about everything that you can get in touch with in some form or fashion.
PZ recommends Ancestry.com as the starting point for your research. It's a subscription website, but he offers a tip for those wanting to get their feet wet without spending any money.
Start out by using Ancestry.com at your local library, because it's free. And you can go in, and you can't store your information there, but at least you can go look for records and you can capture the information.
There's also a free resource, FamilySearch.org, curated by the Mormon Church.
The Mormon Church back before World War II started going around the country and microfilming records from county courthouses, city halls, all over the country. There are millions of records that they have, and some of them you can actually research online, and other ones you can request that the microfilm be sent to a local family history center.
While these websites and the internet databases have revolutionized genealogy, PZ cautions that trips to the library or the county clerk's office may be the only way to unearth a long-lost relative.
There's a lot of things that are still only in book form. The other thing that the library does is that when you come to a library like here, the Regional Genealogical and History Library, is that there's people here to help you.
Finding your ancestors can be rewarding and surprising. You may find a few skeletons in your family closet, but PZ is quick to point out the ultimate reward for his efforts.
I want to pass something on to my children, or do something for my family to bring the family together. And that's what I've done with my family and my wife's family.
If you're ready to discover your family tree, you can start at the Tennessee Genealogical Society offices, or visit their website for information about becoming a member and connecting with experts that can help you find your roots. We spend about a third of our lives asleep. Statistics reveal we also spend about 7 years of our lives tossing and turning in bed trying to get to sleep. And as we age, our sleep patterns change. Stay awake for this next segment and you'll learn how to get a good night's sleep. How common are sleep disorders in older people?
More than 50% of people had some form of sleep disturbance, either difficulty falling to sleep, difficulty maintaining sleep, or feeling refreshed after having had a night's sleep.
What are the most common sleep disorders?
The big disorders basically are the insomnias, the primary insomnias, difficulty falling to sleep, difficulty maintaining sleep, and then feeling fatigue and that sort of thing after an allegedly good night's sleep. And then there are obstructive sleep apnea issues, which is frequent awakening because of upper airway obstruction and reduction of oxygen levels, which incidentally can be very highly related to hypertension and worsening of a congestive heart failure. So it's a real medical problem. Restless leg syndrome and periodic limb movement syndromes, they're highly prominent in the elderly.
Do sleep patterns change as we age?
As we age, our stage 3 and 4 sleep diminishes dramatically so that it is only a few minutes every night. And we maintain times of REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and we have much more awakenings. So as you get older, you do need a quieter, less obtrusive environment, and the most important thing I do as a primary care physician is counsel people on sleep hygiene.
What is sleep hygiene?
Don't eat before you get ready to go to sleep. Don't exercise right before you get ready to go to sleep. Avoid caffeine, avoid alcohol within an hour or two before you're going to go to sleep. A quiet room, relaxation techniques prior to going to bed, and most importantly, probably than anything, is developing a routine prior to going to sleep.
Do sleeping pills work?
It's best that those be used very short term, and their effectiveness, while many people swear by them, I just can't get to sleep without them, doctor. When you objectively look at their effectiveness, they're only a few minutes difference between people if you give them sleeping pills or you don't give them sleeping pills. But I think that the psychological dependence on them is certainly real.
Do I need 8 hours of sleep?
A statistical norm is just that, and any individual, they have to find their own sweet spot for their sleeping. And so giving a number oftentimes creates a degree of anxiety, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to get up and go to work tomorrow, and I'm not going to get my 6 hours. I'm not going to get my 8 hours. Now they get anxious about it. It jacks up their adrenal system. They get nervous. It impedes their sleep. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
When should you seek treatment for a sleep disorder?
If it's been a month, it's basically been a month, and you've consistently not had good sleep for a month, and you're having somnolence and difficulty functioning, I would probably talk to my doctor about that.
For more information on getting a good night's sleep, go to the website of the National Institutes of Health. Want more information about life after 50? Go to our website, wkno.org/besttimes. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching. Good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.